is the Very Reverend Dr. Trevor James, Dean of St Paul's Cathedral. Welcome.
Shall we stand? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gracious God, look upon this council. We give you thanks for the beauty of this region, for the peace and the freedom that we enjoy. And we thank you also for all who arrived on these shores to live here long before us, and for the inheritance and the vision they have given us. You know the needs of this city and this region at this time. We think of the challenges of employment and growth. And you know the challenges our leaders face. So we ask that you will guide and bless this council. Grant to the Mayor and all the councillors the wisdom, the courage and fortitude they need. Bless their work with all who sustain and form the life of this community, especially with our university, our health board, and the business community. And we pray that they may pursue policies that are just and fair. May they show compassion for the needy and for all who are weak or in straitened circumstances. May they be open to new possibilities, new ways of working, and new opportunities of service. In all they do, grant that they may be sustained by a vision of this city that will, without fear or favour, promote the common good. These prayers we make through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Right, there are no apologies, so I'll move on to the confirmation of the agenda, and you'll see that there are some amendments to already noted on the agenda, and I'm aware that there is a request for another change, so Councillor Thompson.
Councillors will be aware that I've foreshadowed the desire to have in the closed session and a late agenda item put in with regard to concerns about possible inappropriate communication of closed session matters. I believe that they should not wait until the next meeting, particularly given the time between now, this our last meeting of the year, and the first meeting of the new year.
Thank you. Well, I'll tentatively put that on the agenda, and the council can decide whether it stays, whether it is amended in that regard. Councillor Vance, do you?
Regarding item 29, that's currently in the non-public part of the meeting, I would like to move that item 29, the Dunedin City Council participation in housing warrant of fitness field test, be moved into the public part of the meeting so that the public are aware of the basis of the report and where it's heading.
I initially completely shared your view on this, and just want to let councillors know about this. So I inquired of staff about this particular item, questioning why it was on, well, it needed to be in non-public, and they pointed out to me that it's not so much a matter of confidentiality as timing, as they are working with partners and are committed to all making the issue public when councils, various councils and some of the other, when the other partners had agreed to it, just including us. So the reasons that it is put in non-public, and the reasons that staff wish it to be there, is that they have given an undertaking to partners on unfinished work, that the timing of the release of information be coordinated between the partners. That's the reason. I'm happy to put it to council. I'm taking your
Can I second Councillor Van der Vis's motion? And I think there's a way through this, but it may be, I'd like to speak to it because it may be that I don't totally understand, or we can find a way to get it public later.
Okay. So we have the situation is we have two suggested amendments to the...
Sorry, I have another one.
So do I.
It's regarding the application for a new water connection, and I have pre-sent to Lynn Robbins, who I'd understood from the agenda paper was going to be the secretary here today, sorry, the minutes taker. And the motion read that all out-of-zone water applications, agenda items 19, 20 and 21 be held over for debate at the next infrastructure services meeting to ensure time to examine forum presenters' claims. Now, I recognise that one of those has dropped off and that there has only been one presenter today, and I think that was item 20, was it? So my motion would then would now read that all out-of-zone water application, that the out-of-zone water application item agenda number 20 be held over for debate at the next infrastructure services meeting, so that we have an opportunity to actually check what's being presented at the forum and get a more informed view. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to staff about it. The issue of pipes already being in the ground was new to me, and I feel that if we had the opportunity to bring it up at the next IS meeting, we would be able to then make a better decision on that.
So can I just ask, what further information would you envisage being available at the infrastructure services that won't be available by interrogating staff?
Well, staff have the presenter has suggested that staff had essentially told them that it would be okay, but that they didn't actually get officially confirmation of their application having been consented. And to me, there's sort of a grey area there, which I would like to know more about. I would also like to know more about the areas that are involved. The precedent effect has been mentioned by the presenter of a state housing block there, sorry, some sort of housing proposal, there being a 6-inch main there. To me, there are a whole host of issues there, which I don't think we can really do justice by giving a decision on right now. And I'm wondering if in fact it's not a good idea to have a presenter present their side of the thing and us immediately voting on it before we've had time to discuss it with staff. Because there's always two sides to these issues that I've
Can I suggest that an equally, taking your points, an equally valid way of dealing with it would be to leave them on the agenda, address them, and if in the course of interrogation of staff we find that there indeed are things that we don't know about and that we wish to know more about, at that point we can leave it on the table. But until we get to there, really what you're saying is that we don't know what we don't know, and I think we know more. So I'm pointing out that we have the option of leaving it to infrastructure services even if it stays on the agenda.
I recognise that as a compromise. However, to me there's a bigger process point here, and that is that I don't think it is appropriate process for us to get a forum presentation and then to immediately make a decision in the meeting following. I would very much like to, hopefully in the future at least, make sure that that doesn't happen again. To me that just doesn't give us opportunities.
Okay, well, I actually think your earlier point was the stronger one, frankly. But nonetheless, now I need to, that's fine.
Sorry, that's a motion now for just item 20.
I think it's 21.
Sorry, 21 was the other one that was right.
So I've got 3 different suggested amendments. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, I have some difficulty with item 22 being held in public. Not that I don't think that it's of high importance to be in public in some of the debate, but I want to refer to other discussions which we've had in closed meetings, in the discussion on that, and I'm rather torn as how I can do that if this isn't public. So I'm going to ask, at least in the interim, that the debate on 22 go into closed, and we take it into closed section. This is the one on the director's fees of DCHL Group.
Right.
And I don't think I'm able to have the debate if I can't refer to matters that have been discussed in confidential papers.
I'm happy to second that, Your Worship.
Right. So at the moment, I want to find an efficient way through this process because we have 4 amendments, and if I put them all tentatively into the agenda, then some of us will be voting against some and some of us will be voting against the others. So I suggest we work through them singly and vote on each one going onto the agenda or off the agenda, whichever it is, and I'm struggling to keep up on which it is. Councillor Wilson.
Just noting there are actually 8 amendments because there's the other 4 on the updated agenda.
Well, they're a given. They're staying there anyway at the moment.
Okay.
I'd rather we didn't complicate this anymore. I'd rather we didn't complicate this any more than we need to.
Just noted.
You have to agree to them though.
Yes, you agree.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely. We're not going to. I don't think we need to debate them separately. So, can you just remind me, Councillor Vandervis, I understand you're
Bringing item number 29 into public.
into public.
Yep.
And deferring
Item 21 to the next infrastructure services meeting.
All right. What I intend to do then is to treat this as we voted by panel as to whether the process for this is absolutely correct, but treat each one of these as a motion. I'll invite Councillor Thompson if you wish to speak to it again. You haven't. Does anyone want any further speakers on Councillor Thompson's? Sorry. Is there a seconder for Councillor Thompson's motion? Councillor Staines.
I'll second it.
Well, I've got a second, Councillor. So to move Councillor Thompson, second to Councillor Staines, that an urgent item be put on the non-public agenda as per the communication from Councillor Thompson earlier today. Councillor Busy.
Yeah, look, without knowing what Councillor Thompson wants to speak to, or what his motion may be, or his concerns may be, we have a process that deals with non-public issues or issues that are held in committee, and so unless this is going to change that process, or if this is going to be an addition or an alteration to that process, then I would express my opposition to that.
I'm not sure. No, this isn't changing the process. This is just adding an item that Councillor Thompson contends is of some urgency and needs to be dealt with.
But the item related to issues that have arisen from non-public meetings.
Yes.
And we have already had a process for dealing with that. Well, what I'm saying is, why doesn't Councillor Thompson go through that process rather than asking
What process are you referring to?
Sorry?
What process are you referring to?
Well, the process as to how we handle issues that have been, information that's been released in public, in a committee into the public domain. I think that's what he's referring to, if that's the way I understand it.
Yes, but I'm asking you what alternative process you would, Councillor Thompson wants to bring it to the forum of his peers.
Yep.
What alternative process would you suggest?
Well, I mean, without being too literal, I mean, there is a process if someone's concerned about information that was in private, in public, in committee, has been released into the public, then there is a set process that councillor follows with regard to their concerns. And I think in the first instance, they would go to our legal representatives to look at that issue, and then it would be referred to the committee that looks at those issues.
Well, in this instance, my understanding is that Councillor Thompson isn't making an accusation, so he can't make a complaint, and in any case, council can take it to there if it wishes to after the discussion. Anyway, further discussion. Right, I'll put it all those in favour of putting this in, the extra item onto the non-public agenda, say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. Now moving on to Councillor Vandervis's item 29 into public. This is the participation in the Warren Fitness. You've spoken to it. Is there a seconder for this? Seconder Councillor Calvert. Anyone wish to speak to this?
Sorry. The claim that comes at the end of the report that the reason for keeping this in non-public is because of a timing issue with some of the councils. I don't believe that there's any real precedent for keeping something non-public just because it doesn't gel with some other councils' timetables. I believe that for something in this council to be in non-public, it either has to be prejudicial to some commercial situation, or it has to involve compromise of natural persons, and I don't believe that this falls into either category, which is why I think we should have it into public.
I'm not sure process-wise, but I can see that there's some merit in not having some of the information that either is provided or we might want to be provided out until things happen that might be happening within the next couple of weeks. My concern, however, is that there's no obvious mechanism to have the reports and other things that we might yet want out. And as a secondary item, I don't understand what happens about the conversation we have, even if later, if there's a decision that we can release the reports and paperwork after a period, I don't understand what happens about the discussion we have concerning it, because I would like the discussion we have to be able to canvass items that we are then able to speak about. And I don't understand quite how I achieve that, but I don't want us to be talking about something in non-public and then the reports to be released, but the discussion we have not being able to be released, because I think this is an issue that a lot of people are concerned about, and it's an issue that was campaigned on, and I think for us to be having anything to do with it in private beyond a short period of time for any particular purpose, especially when a lot of us campaigned on accountability and openness and all the rest of that, to not be able to have the discussion in public, even if it's delayed release-wise, the discussion for a couple of weeks or whatever, I think that's inappropriate. I don't think we should be talking in private about this sort of thing.
Further speakers? Councillor Thompson.
Look, I find myself in agreement. I don't really think that the fact that other cities may be considering whether or not to participate in this is a valid reason for keeping it in closed session. This is about our decision, and it's a decision that presumably we would take, mindful of the fact that other cities, organisations or whatever might subsequently take a similar or different view. So I don't feel that that's a difficult issue.
Councillor McTavish.
Well, mine's just a question for staff, and that is what undertaking has been given that we will discuss the proposal in non-public, and if council were to move today to have the discussion in public, what might the ramifications be for our partnership or our partnership going forward?
Councillors, there's been a request from the other members of the partnership that the documentation is not released publicly until all the partner organisations have made a decision as to whether to sign up to the project. The intention is that once all the partner organisations have made a decision, that the documentation, the today's report and the other documentation relating to the project would then be released in a coordinated way. It will be finalised and it would be released in a coordinated way nationally.
Can you just clarify the nature of the partners? Because some of us have mentioned councils, but actually I don't know if they are only or are councils. So can were you free to disclose the nature of the partners?
Okay, through the Mayor. Yes, at present there are other local authorities involved, as well as the University of Otago, Wellington Research, Beacon Pathway, ECA, ACC. So there's a number of other organisations. It's also worth noting, I think, that there's been significant goodwill and effort gone in from all those partners. It's been a national discussion and group, and there's been a lot of effort to get to this stage. There's a national sort of communications plan. So if it went public now, I think the idea is to get a message across in a consistent and transparent way, and thereafter for there to be the opportunity for full discussion at individual council level. So that's...
And I take it that the stage we're at here, we're just giving the go-ahead for further work. So, in fact, what will eventually come out will be a lot more research.
Possibly, yeah, an evaluation, and then next step. This is just about a field test.
This is just about
a field test.
Field test.
A test.
Councillor Wilson.
Just taking that further, I suppose the question is, if we were seen to debate this in public, and would that put at risk the whole partnership in your view?
Yes, sorry, I should have said that. Because of that effort and goodwill and the people working together to coordinate the national communications sort of plan, and the other councils have all done various things with sort of legal opinion, all working together so that to go public at this stage would undermine the project and breach the confidence of the other partners.
Councillor Tavish, now I note that you asked a question.
Asked a question? Yes.
Speaking now.
Speaking to the motion. I share the views of my colleagues who have moved the motion in that I think it is unfortunate that the first time that we have the opportunity to debate a housing warrant of fitness proposal, it has to be in non-public. But I think the way that this report has been structured and the fact that it is about a specific project and our participation in that project means that we have little choice than to hold it in non-public. And certainly I don't think that this council would want to jeopardise a partnership approach which may prove very fruitful for the purpose of having this debate in public. Certainly my view is that we could gain more out of being part of that partnership than we would out of a week or so's delay in announcing the nature of these discussions to the public. So that's my perspective on it. I do understand the perspective of those who have moved it, and I think perhaps if there was a way to restructure this report such that we had a debate about housing warrant of fitness generically in public and then moved into non-public for a project discussion, then that would be ideal. However, that's not the way that this report is structured, and I don't think it would be an easy task to restructure it in that way. So I will be voting no.
Okay. Further speakers?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think there would be a problem to the other members of the partnership if the discussions we had were then made public after the timing of whatever the chosen report was made? So not just the report, but the discussions, if that's possible, and I don't understand whether it is possible, but would that cause any problems to our possible partners?
Through your worship, I envisage that once the memorandum of understanding between the partners has been signed and this commitment to the project, then I imagine the minutes from this meeting would be able to be made public. I don't imagine there's a problem with that.
Do you questions?
Look, I think the question is really if it is held in closed session and when it is eventually released in closed session, do councillors have a right then to speak freely about any views they may have held or expressed at that time? And I think that's really at the heart of...
Is this a question?
That's a question. That is a question. I think it's... I'm suggesting that that is at the heart of the question being raised.
It's a question mark at the end. Councillor Vanderbilt, did you have a question?
Yes. It's just been said by staff that it's important that the result of this is to get a message across in a consistent and transparent way. That, to me, smacks of predetermination and selling something.
Councillor Vanderbilt, this isn't a question.
The question is, if we are to get the message across in a consistent and transparent way, who are we going to be consistent with? And how is it going to be transparent if we do this in non-public?
Through your worship, but can I just say it's a partnership project, so the consistency is across all of the partners.
Okay. For my part, I take Councillor Calvert's point about the discussion being the essence of it. However, in this case, I think it's more a matter of timing, and I think looking at it pragmatically for me, it's a matter of what harm could be done one way and what harm could be done the other. And I'm inclined to vote to leave it in non-public. It's finely balanced. If there are no further speakers, I'm going to put it.
Point of order. The Mayor was clearly confused by my question. It was indeed a question, but it didn't get an answer. So, to the extent that it is held in closed session, but the outcome is ultimately released, do councillors have a full right then to comment about any views or opinions they may have expressed at the time in the debate in closed session?
Yes, they do.
That was the answer I was saying.
Rebecca?
Will the National Communications Plan be a direct line? The final details of that is unclear, so I'm expecting yes. But until we know the final details of that communication plan, which we will share with you as soon as we're able to do so.
I don't think...
Can I just clarify?
I think the question was about what we could feel comfortable about speaking about our discussions, which aren't bound by anybody else's communication plan. Right, I'm going to put it, now this is whether to take item 29 out of non-public into public. And so if you, all those in favour of taking it out of non-public and into public, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. It's lost. Now on to deferring item 21 to the next, thank you, Nikki. To the next Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. Are you happy with what you've said? Wish to speak to it again, Councillor?
No, I've said, yeah.
Now, is there a seconder for this? I'm sorry, lapses for want of a second. And the last one, Councillor Wilson, you wish to take item 22 from public into non-public, and you said you would second it, Councillor Vanderbilt. So, anyone like to, would you like to speak to it again, Councillor Wilson?
No.
No. So, anyone else wish to speak? I'm going to put it. This is to take item 22 regarding directors' fees into non-public for the purpose of frank discussion.
It's to include items that we've discussed in closed meetings that haven't been made public.
Right. Okay. Everyone clear what we're voting about? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So, with the addition of the additional item in non-public by Councillor Thompson and the the transferring of item 22 into non-public and the 4 amendments on the order paper.
I'll move them.
You moved, Councillor Wilson. Seconded, Councillor Staines. This is to confirm the agenda. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, item 3 is just a declaration of interest for the Councillor's information. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. I'll move from the Chair that the minutes of the meeting of the Dunedin City Council held on the 29th of October be confirmed as a correct record with one slight amendment. I note, and this is pricking a little, but I note that I was referred to in answering the mihi as the Mayor. At that point I wasn't. I was the Mayor-elect, and I think it's important to note that as in terms of process.
Point of order, Mr Chairman, it's not about that, but can you just confirm for me, please, that the memo we received from Ms Jordan relates to the 3rd set of minutes in the section C? Thank you.
Second, yes. So, it's been moved and seconded. This is 4A. For that correction, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I'll further move from the Chair that the public part of the minutes of the meeting of the Dunedin City Council held on the 16th of November 2013 be confirmed as a correct record. Councillor Staines, any discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I'll further move from the Chair that the public part of the minutes of the meeting of the Dunedin City Council held on 21st of November 2013 be confirmed as a correct record. Now, I note that there's an amendment come in, and this is what you're referring to, I think. I'll just move it and second it, and then we can discuss it. Second, Councillor Staines, discussion. Councillor Benson.
Well, Mr Chairman, I, as all other councillors, received a memo from Ms Jordan in respect of an alteration to the minutes, which, in my view, in fact, clearly demonstrated by the text of that memo, doesn't actually reflect what happened at the time. In my view, the minutes should be as close to, if not completely, an accurate record of what transpired at the meeting. If someone's got an issue around the veracity of that or the accuracy, they may well want to challenge the accuracy of the minutes. But I don't believe it's appropriate for any organisation, least of all a council of this stature, to subsequently rewrite the minutes because someone wished something different had happened. And it's quite clear from the memo that's exactly what the case is here. So I won't be supporting the suggested amendment, and I'd like to move, therefore, the further amendment that the original text stand. If someone, in this case Councillor van der Vis, wants to make a clarification statement, he can do that into the minutes of this meeting in respect of those minutes, and that doesn't present a problem. But massaging the minutes to reflect something that didn't take place is not acceptable.
Okay. So there's a difference.
So, Your Worship, I think some of us are slightly in the dark as to what the motion, the amendment is. Some of us aren't aware of the memo or haven't got it, and I'm just slightly lost as to the... were we emailed it? Because...
And emailed an amendment to the minutes. Perhaps I can explain. Councillor van der Vis approached Ms Jordan with a request that the minutes be amended to reflect the fact that when he had his vote recorded against a two-part motion, that in fact he was only recording his vote against one part of that. Is that a fair summation of the situation, Councillor van der Vis?
It would be fairer if it was absolutely clear on my part that it was only the one part that I was wanting my vote recorded against.
So the original minutes showed that Councillor van der Vis recorded his vote against the motion, which indeed he did, but the motion had two parts, and he wished to clarify that he was recording his vote against only one part of it. So that is the explanation. Councillor Benson Pope has moved an amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Hawkins. So we are now speaking to the amendment. This is to return to amendments. This is to return the minutes to their original form. Speakers.
Well, on the basis of Councillor Andrews' explanation, I just put it to Councillor Benson Pope. Would he be willing to drop his further amendment?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, Councillor Benson Pope has moved an amendment that goes back to the original minutes.
Yes.
And he asked for an explanation from Councillor Vandervis, which has been given. I thought Councillor Vandervis' explanation was quite fair, and I would just ask Councillor Benson Pope if he would consider withdrawing his amendment.
I think, if I may speak, Councillor Benson Pope, he was saying that in the event of an explanation, the minutes wouldn't have needed to be amended in the first place. That's the point of your amendment. Yes.
I've got no issue with Councillor Vandervis wanting to make it clear that he supported one half of the motion and not the other, but that's not what happened at the meeting. My point is that the minutes, there's no dispute about whether the minutes reflect accurately what transpired at the meeting. And if Councillor, there's an easy way through this, if the Councillor, Mr Mayor, wishes to make a statement of the kind he just did that goes into the minutes of this meeting, well then the record is clear. But to massage the minutes subsequently because of the fact that someone voted in a way that they're not happy with 2 weeks later is a laughable procedure, and I don't think it should be accepted by anyone at this table.
So, Councillor Vandervis.
I agree entirely with Councillor Benson Pope that the minutes should clearly reflect what went on at the meeting. When I read them, they plainly didn't. And all I suggested was that we amend the minutes so that they do plainly represent what it was that I wanted my vote against recorded. And if Mr Benson Pope wants to interpret what I said at the meeting differently, well, that's his privilege, but I believe that I was very clear in expressing what it was that I wanted to record my vote against. And I was not, I was very surprised to find that it had been lumped in with something that I didn't have any issue about.
I have an issue with that, because that basically implies that the chair and the recording, Pam, didn't record what happened, and I believe we did. It was a combined motion, and you recorded your vote against it, quite clearly. You did not specify that you were recording your vote against part of it. That is the point.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. I'm operating under the assumption we have a recording of these proceedings. So can we just not waste unnecessary time on this? It's an important issue, but not one that should delay us, and get it checked. I don't want to put Ms Jordan in a difficult position, or yourself, and I think when we have the capacity to check what was actually on the digital file and see what was voted on, it can be clarified.
We can do that. In the meantime, we have to resolve this amendment. So,
point of order.
Yes.
The video has already been looked at, and Ms Jordan has advised me that the sound quality on it was poor and that it was not able to be accurately ascertained whether I particularly... It was the same request.
No, you made 2 requests.
That's because it's noted twice in the minutes. It's the same request. All I've done is ask that my vote be recorded against the bit that I was against. That's... Look, quite frankly, I'm over it. Just do whatever you like.
We will put this amendment now. Is there any further speakers to the amendment to return the minutes to the recording of the meeting as it happened? Is there any... Right, I'm going to put it. All those in favour of the amendment to return the minutes to the original form, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. It's carried. Now I'm going to put the substantive motion, and I think it's already been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the substantive motion, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now, on to the minutes of the committees. The hearing committee, can I just go back to that? Can I say, and I'm in no way commenting on anyone's good faith, but can I suggest that this points up the need for absolute clarity when communicating from councillors whether they want their vote recorded. I am endeavouring to be as scrupulous as I can with what happens and repeat it to Pam or whomever the recording person is, but it just points up the need to be clear so the record is not disputable. On to the minutes of committees. The hearings committee, Councillor Wilson, or Councillor Noon, is it?
Thank you, Worship. This is 5A, 25
5A.
Townleys Road. I'll move that the minutes of the hearings committee meeting held on the 18th of September 2013 be noted.
Second to Councillor Wilson. Is there any discussion? Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
I'll further move, Your Worship. This is 5B, 41 Emerson Street. I'll move that the minutes of the hearings committee meeting held on the 1st and 7th of October 2013 be noted.
Second to Councillor Wilson. Discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
I'll further move, Your Worship, 5C, 62 Gladstone Road North in Mosgiel, that the minutes of the hearings committee meeting held on the 24th of October 2013 be noted.
Councillor, second to Councillor Vandevers. I think you were the other. Yeah. Discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Further move, Your Worship, 5D, 60 Factory Road, Mosgiel, and I move that the minutes of the hearings committee meeting held on the 5th and the 25th of October 2013 be noted.
Just seconded for that. Councillor Wilson. Discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
And finally, Your Worship, 5E, and this was the opposed special licence application for Elm Grove School Fair, the liquor licence. And I'll move that the minutes of the hearings committee meeting held on the 5th and the 31st of October 2013 be noted.
Seconded. Councillor Wilson. Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6, Grants Committee. Councillor Wilson, you chaired this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the minutes of the Grants Subcommittee held on the 22nd of November 2013 be noted.
Second, Councillor Wiley. Discussion? Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of community boards. Item 7, Wakawiti Coast, Councillor Noon.
Your Worship, would you be happy if I just move both A and B at once, just to speed the process up?
Yes.
Okay, I'll move that the minutes of the meeting of the Waikouaiti Coast Community Board held on the 30th of October 2013 be noted, and also move that the minutes of the meeting of the Waikouaiti Coast Community Board held on the 6th of November 2013 be noted.
Second, Councillor Wilson. Discussion? Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 8, Otago Peninsula, Councillor Peake.
Your Worship, I move likewise, A and B, that the minutes of the meeting of the Otago Peninsula Community Board held on 31 October 2013 be that from the ordinary meeting, that the minutes of the meeting of the Otago Peninsula Community Board held on 7 November 2013 be noted.
Second to Councillor McTavish. Discussion? Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 9, Strathtyre, Councillor Lord.
I would like to move that the minutes of the meeting of the Strathtyre Community Board on the 7th of November be noted.
Second to Councillor Wilson. Discussion. Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 10, Mosgiel Tyre. Are you able to move this, Councillor Wilson? Because I know you were.
I don't think anyone else was there, so.
Sorry?
I don't think anyone else was there. I couldn't attend, so I think.
So you better.
Yeah. I'll move to number 10A and B, that the minutes of the meeting of the Mosgiel Tyre Community Board held on the 30th of October 2013 be noted, and that the minutes of the meeting of the Mosgiel Tyre Community Board held on the 12th of November 2013 be noted.
Second to Councillor Lord. Discussion. Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 11, Chalmers, Councillor Nick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the minutes of the meeting of the Chalmers Community Board held on the 30th of October 2013 be noted, and also the ordinary meeting, that the minutes of the meeting of the Chalmers Community Board held on the 13th of November 2013 be noted.
Second to Councillor McTavish. The discussion. Put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now, item 12, Saddle Hill, Councillor White.
I too will move A and B, that the minutes of the meeting of the Saddle Hill Community Board held on 31st of October 2013 be noted, and that the minutes of the meeting of the Saddle Hill Community Board that on 12th of November 2013 be noted.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Noon. Discussion. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. On to the reports. 13, Second Generation District Plan Update and Principles. Ms Johnson, would you like to join Bishop?
Conflict of interest.
Oh, you're sitting back? Proper manner? Yeah. Just give you this.
I might actually sit
Now,
there.
I will open this up in the first instance to questions. Or do you have anything to lead off with? Give us any context or?
No, just to say this is a follow-up report. It's very similar to a report that was put up in April. It essentially gives an update on the progress with the 2GP and asks Council to reconfirm the process moving forward based on the process prior to the election.
Okay. Questions? Councillor McTavish.
The only question that I have is what follow-up staff are having with people that submitted directly on the preferred options phase. Is there like a formal response that's going back to them, or a letter of some description which might outline the process from here on, or will they just be added to the sort of generic database of updates?
So basically we acknowledged all the feedback that we received. We also said that we wouldn't be responding to people with, as if it were a submission with a formal response. We will publish the summary of feedback that was received. We have the issues and options phase is now, that report is now complete. The preferred options phase report is not far behind it. They will both go on the web page. Our primary means of communication is through the City Development News, so that when those reports are on the web page, we'll let people know. But the reports are merely a summary of the feedback that we've had, not any responses to them. So the responses in terms of what may have changed as a result of the submissions will only be included in the Section 32 documentation that will be released at the time of notification. And that's merely just from a staffing point of view that that's the best we can do with resources that we have.
I understand that will anyone that has, and I don't want to use the word submitted, but put in feedback to you on the preferred options phase, are they by default added to the City Development News database, or is it possible that people that have provided that feedback will have received acknowledgement of their feedback but won't have had a follow-up with access, or will not have follow-up with access to that summary document once it's complete?
To sign up to the City Development News has to follow the rules of, I don't know what the legislation is called, but essentially the anti-spam legislation. So you have to, somebody has to formally sign up to that specifically. You can't add them through another mechanism. So when people attended workshops, usually on the sign-in sheet, we ask them to tick and request to be added. We also advertise it quite heavily the means by which you go through the DCC website and can sign up yourself. But we can't just add people unless they specifically requested to be added either on paper or through that other mechanism. So it is possible that somebody's put in feedback and not signed up specifically for the City Development News, and they would have to go in and specifically sign up for us to meet the requirements of that legislation.
Councillor Vanders.
Thank you, Anna. Given that this plan is, well, quite markedly the biggest plan that we're going to produce, and it's going to be a massive document, and it's going to take years really before the whole thing comes out, I'm wondering if it's possible, and I'm just wondering from a staff point of view, would it be possible for the briefings and workshops around the 2GP, if it's possible to have them in public and to perhaps alter slightly what staff present, given that there are no decisions made at these briefings or workshops, as a way of allowing the public to get a feel for how the plan is developing over time, rather than just getting a sort of fait accompli of something with an immense range of issues in it at the end. I would just hope that it might be possible that if these briefings and workshops could be made public, that the involvement that I think many other councillors are looking for as well might be served by simply having the public there and having these briefings recorded.
Well, just by way of background, to say that the public won't be presented with a fait accompli. We have, I would say, our public engagement process has more phases and is broader than any other council's 2GP consultation I've seen. We've had, an issues and options phase. We've had a preferred options phase. We are working with stakeholders throughout the process, and we have the reference groups working with us moving forward, and they will see the same information that councillors see. They have all been required to sign a confidentiality agreement because of that. Just because I suppose you don't want people speculating on what might be in terms of the 2GP. I don't personally think there's any need for the councillor workshops to be public. I think there are other mechanisms for interested parties to get involved, and certainly whenever we've been approached by groups that would like to have continued involvement, either we find them a place on a reference group, or sometimes we'll meet with them individually, and I think that works best for us to keep the councillor engagement one stream and the public and key stakeholder engagement another stream. Just it's not about hiding anything. So I just think it works better for us to have the conversation separately, but it is your call. So you need to make that decision yourself.
Councillor Benson.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, it's by way of a response to a question about how this process goes into the future. Can I just confirm that the opinion that has been appended to this paper from Anderson Lloyd, that was the substance of the original briefing note that was presented as a staff opinion?
Well, it was presented originally as an opinion that we had worked on together. I mean, primarily it's a legal opinion. We asked for guidance specifically around a number of questions, and we worked with the lawyers to make it understandable. I mean, even so, it's written in a very legalistic way, but it is more or less the same content. We updated the committee names, and there's a few turns of phrase that we simplified from the original, but they're more or less the same.
Can I just follow up on that, Mr. Chair? And that, to me, illustrates the difficulty of the issue we have here, that this process is about councillors during these briefings, giving a direction to staff for more work and so on, and ultimately presenting a document to council for sign-off to be publicly notified, which is an extensive legal process which will take some time, possibly years, who knows. And to illustrate the sensitivity around this, we've got a very extensive opinion about how elected members should conduct themselves. Now, having such discussions with the wider general public present is more than a little problematic, can I suggest. And in fact, we've got the further illustration of one of our council colleagues sitting out of this conversation for reasons that he's chosen to make that decision. Oh, two of them, sorry. So that being the case, we have a perfect illustration around this table of how difficult this can be, potentially, and how carefully it has to be handled. I'd like to pass on my compliments to the planning people for the way that they've made the issues quite clear for us in this paper and in the other briefing, and I'm pleased to say that the development of the other fora, however many that might end up being, is well underway, and people will look forward to every bit as much participation in this process in the new year as they could possibly want.
Thank you, Councillor Peck.
Your Worship. Just a question around the hazards management section, and just wondered if you are confident of getting the information, of that finer grain information from the ORC, which has an important input into this by March, when the consultation document is to go public.
I think they're aware of the time frame. They haven't advised us that will be a problem. I think the information has been delayed. They haven't advised us that March isn't achievable. I think once they got into the work, they realized it was a lot more complicated than they originally thought, perhaps. But I don't have anything else to they haven't told us it's not possible yet.
Just in terms generally of the response to the preferred options consultation, and I congratulate you and your team on the comprehensive way you did that. But 105 completed forms, is that the kind of response you're expecting, or do you think you could have generated more feedback?
I think it's pretty good. Getting people engaged in plan development is a notoriously difficult thing to do. I think when you get to the detail and people's, properties are rezoned, and particularly in places like Auckland, where you've got a significant amount of change proposed, you will get big numbers in terms of submissions. But for Dunedin, and based on the level of information that we had put out and based on the types of changes, I think it's quite a reasonable figure in terms of involvement. We certainly haven't had any feedback that people felt there wasn't enough opportunity, and like I said before, when people approach us, even if we're outside a formal consultation process and they want to come and talk to us, maybe they missed out, we always make time for them. So it's quite a flexible and ongoing process.
Councillor Noon.
My question has been answered. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Given the proposed changes that have been mooted around the Resource Management Act, I just wonder whether we've received any advice as to, should those proposals come to pass, how that would affect either the process or the timeline of the 2GP development?
I don't think it will affect the process or timeline. It may affect us further down the track. I'm involved in a group that's been pulled together by local government New Zealand to help work with the government on the proposals around a template. And I think the approach that all the planning managers across the country are taking are trying to be proactively giving advice to the government on what's workable and trying to influence it that way. And I suppose I have to try to be optimistic that that the whole sector's working together. We're all saying the same things. We're all likely to propose a unified voice, and that will hopefully be listened to in terms of what comes out of the template and other changes.
further questions?
Happy to move, Your Worship. I'm happy to move.
Second.
Moved Councillor Terrace, seconded Councillor Wilson. Is there any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Now I'm going to interrupt proceedings to make a short announcement. Standard & Poor's, as you are aware, came to us and interviewed us some time ago, and with a view to looking at our rating. They have taken us off negative watch and expect us to be stable for 2 years. So that's a very positive result, and clearly the result of considerable effort. Councillor Thompson.
Your Worship, I just think it would be appropriate to move a vote of thanks to staff with regard to that outcome. When Standard & Poor's did their evaluation last year, their conclusion wasn't one that was come to as an overnight conclusion. It was one that was come to as a result of concerns that had built. And I think that's an important part of understanding how they think that these are not snapshots in time. They are evaluations, their judgment calls around change over time as much as anything. And so for the fact that they have reviewed us and taken us off that negative watch, I think in the space of 1 year is actually an extraordinary turnaround, and it really comes as a result of staff under the previous CEO and supported by council in terms of responsible decision making, in my view, taking significant operational cost out of this organisation and borrowing less money than they had projected to borrow, and having a clear focus around getting that debt level further down into the future. Now, that is also not a snapshot in time. It is a process that Standard & Poor's have clearly recognised has occurred, and that we will need to continue to demonstrate is continuing to occur, or quite clearly they will review that again. I did have a concern when I knew the review was coming up that it might be a little like probation. You know, you don't get it first time. They tell you you've been a good chap, but go away and come back and see us in 6 months, unless you're Swan. But that wasn't the case, and it was very clear, I think, that they were switched on to the changes that were being made. So with that background, I would like to recommend a vote of thanks to staff for their work over the last really 2 years, I think, to change that view of Standard & Poor's.
Stable reflects Dunedin City Council's improved liquidity and budgetary performance. We expect these improvements to be sustained, allowing Dunedin to reduce its debt burden. Further, we consider the likelihood of significant adverse findings from the Auditor General's inquiry into Delta Utility Services Limited, council-controlled trading organisation, to be low. Third, we have affirmed our AA long-term and A-1+ short-term issuer credit ratings on Dunedin. And finally, the ratings reflect our view of New Zealand's predictable and supportive institutional framework, plus our very positive view of Dunedin's financial management and the Council's strong budgetary performance. That is a glowing report card in my view. Right, on to item 14, the burial information review.
That much. Did you put the motion, or did you just take it by acclamation?
I attended a briefing with staff the other day on this matter with the Law Commission, and I just wondered, I imagine that this report was completed before that that briefing, and I just wonder whether or not you guys have anything to add on the basis of that briefing, or whether the report still stands.
Through your worship, you said that was prepared prior to that meeting. The report essentially still stands. There was a couple of things I guess became apparent was that there are a number of items, matters in the review which address problems which exist in other parts of the country which perhaps don't exist in Dunedin. That's probably the main thing that became apparent. Yeah.
I think I'm happy to move that Councillor McTavish, Councillor Benson Pope and the Mayor be delegated the authority.
Are you basing this on the...
I think I saw it in the email perfectly. I might have suggested you were...
Basing this
on the recommendation, yes, it says...
Yes, but on the committees that are involved with this.
Yes, sorry, it's part of planning, it's part of community development. You can do it as chairs if you wish. I find that a tiresome way of doing these things.
Discussion. No, I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Yes. Carried. On to item 15, Community Resilience Forum recommendation report on food.
I don't quite get with the recommendations how we can consider the recommendations and decide whether to endorse them, noting the resourcing requirements when we don't know about the resourcing requirements. Is it, do you know something we don't?
Through your worship, we felt that it was important to bring to the council's attention the fact that staff are already working on existing council priorities, and if this additional new work area is added, the other work will have to be reprioritised. So further than that, we haven't actually done that exercise. It's just needing to be aware that we can't deliver all priorities.
Staff are already doing some work in this area, and quite a lot of staff are involved one way or another in pulling partnerships together, if you like, or pulling like-minded groups of people together, making sure that different groups talk. That's kind of part of our daily bread and butter. It's fair to say, though, that if there are additional projects that will require chunks of staff time or budget or have budgetary implications, then we will bring those back to council for specific endorsement and agreement. So, by way of example, over at the university, they're working on a project called Food South, particularly good initiative. We've got minor links in and would look to continue that. We've got a number of staff that are working in the food area around the council, so we look to try and make sure that those are working together more seamlessly. We'd be able to do that as our business as usual, if you like, but additional projects will come back to you for approval.
Your Worship, I can just see this, based on this report, being a getting bigger project. You know, looking at what you've documented to date, how big do you anticipate this happening?
It's quite actually hard to say at this time. I think it was quite clear from the Community Resilience Forum's work that there are a number of stakeholders, and we only touched the tip of the iceberg with the food stakeholders in the city. So I think it could, yeah, it has the potential to be a big piece of work.
Do you have an anticipated budget on staffing and where you're going to go with this?
No.
I think just refer back to the chief executive, that if, this is really just endorsing it in principle, if the project comes out of it, that will come back to council for budgetary kick-off. Project to do itself, the needs without it from the council.
Yeah, I
Just
understand.
point of order, Your Worship, that isn't what the recommendation says. It isn't endorsing it in principle at all. It's endorsing it having noted any budgetary implications which we cannot do. So this isn't a recommendation endorsing something in principle.
Well, these are different, like what I was explaining was that the chief executive's point that resourcing for specific projects will come back to council.
Yeah, I understand that. The basis of what I look at is what's already happened so far in the community. And talking to participants in the community with, for example, the Bathgate Community Garden, I just see this getting a bigger and bigger issue. And you know, the community groups are doing such a great job. Why would the DCC, essentially from what I'm reading, be the overriding body on this rather than letting these community groups keep working with what they're doing?
Yeah, I think whilst there is a lot of community work going on, I think it's clear that no one's really holding the ring on all that work. So I think that you could see that there could be a role for council, and we have heard from, I think one of the key stakeholders was Public Health South, who've indicated that if the council were to take a more coordinating role, then they would be very happy to support it.
Sorry, Your Worship, but I'm stuck on this because I already see that the forum meets 8 times a year. I thought that was a great way for these things to take place. For example, the Rotary Club I'm a part of was active in Bathgate Community School Project, and they have already said if it was the DCC was involved in it, they probably wouldn't have been in it. And I see other community groups around town in that same matter, and I'm thinking the forum has been working well. I just can't understand why we would be looking at throwing greater resources and people and money at this project. So I support the concept. I think it's great.
Does in your opinion, either of your opinion, this recommendation, this report today, does this pave the way basically for additional projects? Do you believe the recommendation as it stands?
I think there's possibly a need to clarify that there's 2 sets of recommendations here. So the covering staff report just really asks you to consider the recommendations of the Community Resilience Forum, which are on page 15.5. So and what the Resilience Forum was suggesting, that staff, if you the council endorses food as a strategic issue, that further work is undertaken to sort of scope out the budget and staff time that's required. So
okay. Given that there may be additional staff time required, and this may be a new area to go into, and it's been said that this could be a role for council, how does that fit with the Local Government Amendment Act, December of last year, which actually seeks to restrict the number of areas that councils get into? Is this not actually expanding it against the thrust of the Local Government Amendment Act?
Through the chair, short of stating within the report what the revised purpose of local government is, we haven't taken, I think it can fall within that, the revised purpose of local government. whether it's a priority is down to the council to decide within that definition.
Thank you.
For me, I'm not against the project per se, but it's a costing issue, it's a resourcing issue, and it might even, as it's said somewhere in this in the papers here, have some implications for our economic development strategy, which I'd go along with. But just keeping it very simple, a report back to the annual plan, and this touches on the comments that our Chief Executive Officer made just a moment ago. What is involved in that? Is there much expense involved in coming back and doing the scoping and resourcing to our annual plan? Because I would be quite happy to support a resolution that says something along those lines, that comes back to the annual plan and we discuss it, and we can look at it in line with all the other issues that we'll be discussing at that time.
That's not a difficult thing for us to pull together, and that way you know exactly what it is that you're committing to, ranging from the kind of collaboration we've talked about through to potentially project-based input. We can do that, staff can do that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I feel that we are being asked to, if we have any appetite, so to speak, for this issue today. And for me, I think we need to push on with the thrust of it. I would, taking into account, the Chief Executive's comment that if there were any significant budgetary implications, that these would come back to the council. But essentially, I see this council as in an enabling role. It's not necessarily going to be pushing for food, food banks and all the rest of it, but it has to have a district plan that is enabling of say, for example, the use of our high-class soils for farming and for market gardening. And it also has a role in encouraging, anyway, through the Resilience Forum or any other mechanism, the idea of community gardens. I look up at Wellington and I see, no, it's got to be a question.
Question time, and I don't want to cut you off before 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Question time.
Sorry. All right. I'm sorry. That's right.
Councillor,
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to move a motion. Would you entertain that at this point?
well, I'll put it on hold, and because I know there are a couple of other people who wish to ask questions. Councillor Wilson.
I've had the pleasure of sitting on the Community Resilience Forum and hearing the debate, so I'm slightly asking questions that I just want to confirm really with you. The opportunities here, my understanding is that there's already existing work being done by the university and other groups that we may partner that may not mean that we necessarily incur all the costs, but it would be a good partner to be with. And I'm just wondering, if we didn't go ahead with this and put some consideration into it, would there be lost opportunities for the city, both potentially in jobs and in health benefits that may come from us having some consideration of this?
Potentially there might. I don't know whether procedurally this is the appropriate thing to do, but really staff are front. We wrote the covering report, but this is a report from the Community Resilience Forum, and I do wonder whether Councillor McTavish, as the chair of the Resilience Forum, would be better placed to answer some of these questions.
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions that come my way, if that's maybe that's a better way of doing it. I do have some sort of overarching comments, perhaps from a community resilience perspective, that may assist in the discussions if you would like me to make those, but I'm happy also to hold those until discussion.
I think we've got a motion on the table that we address. And this particular question.
Well, no, it's just a question. I'm just wondering if the staff concur with that. This isn't just about food, it's also about jobs and generally about health, and that's where I think the reason I'm asking the question, Your Worship, is that I don't want this just to be seen as a food issue. It's about an opportunity for the city, and whether, the way this is framed, I'm just slightly concerned we're focusing just on it as food, but it's, for me, having sat through it, I just want to confirm whether I'm correct in that view.
Well, I can answer that. I had a discussion on Saturday with Richard Blake, the Pro Vice Chancellor of Research and Out initiative, which the university is involved in, which is supporting food businesses across the city with the view to growing those businesses. And he felt, and he referred me to David Thompson, who is the liaison to the university and the economic development strategy stakeholder group, who believes that there's considerable synergy in developing a need to develop food strategy, because you can't fit it in without economic development strategy potential.
Thank you.
Councillor Starnes.
Just around the use of the word issue, and I think it follows on from Councillor Wilson's comment. In using the word issue, it conjures to me that we're in trouble, as opposed to this is an opportunity. So I'm just wondering whether, because I'm thinking of making a suggested word change in the resolutions, whether this really is an issue, i.e. it's something that is pressing on us that we need to deal with, or whether it's an opportunity, i.e. there are positives. So it improves our resilience, but also improves our economic resilience. And whether the word in the resolution should be opportunity, strategic opportunity, as opposed to strategic issue.
Yeah, I would say that we've identified that it's on both sides of that equation. So there are challenges for some parts of the city and for some segments of the community with food prices and things like that. But there are also definitely clear opportunities if we were to get our heads around them from an economic development perspective.
Councillor Thompson has kindly showed me the memorandum I didn't have the benefit of before. On 2A it says a more coordinated internal approach to food-related issues. Would that include, for instance, perhaps a change with our parks and gardens staff from just having ornamental trees, for instance, and shrubs, to having, in future, having some food-producing trees and shrubs? Is that one of the things that we're considering, or is that not really what this is about?
I think that might be an issue that gets considered under this umbrella, but there's no specific issues that have been identified that we're definitely going to cover were this to go forward as yet.
So there hasn't been, I mean, we plant an incredible number of trees and shrubs every year. Has there been any suggestion that we as the DCC might lead the charge, if you like, in actually supplementing, not just having all ornamentals as has been in the past, but say having, productive trees and shrubs as part of just the normal work without having to go to, new projects.
As I understand it, that issue has come to council several times, and I think the parks team have responded in different ways to that request on different occasions. So I think it would be a discussion to have with the community and with parks if that were a proposal that is put forward.
Right. The ways that I've heard that they've responded haven't been different. They've always been the same, which is basically, we want to stick with our ornamentals. But you're saying that this here might actually allow them to look at that differently. Is that what you're saying? If we are to vote for this, is it something that Parks and Gardens would need to take on as well? Maybe that's a simple way of putting the question.
I think all affected departments would need to consider it were it to be endorsed.
Thank you.
I think I agree with staff in that, of course, it hasn't been scoped because we didn't know whether or not this was something that council wished to endorse. But Parks and Reserves is one of those specific areas where council is already interfacing with the community on food-related issues, or around community orchards and things like that on public land. So I guess what the Community Resilience Forum has identified is that there are opportunities, as you've articulated, for us to take a more coordinated approach in all of the work that we do on food as a council. Currently it's all operating in different silos and isn't perhaps as coordinated as it could be towards certain outcomes. So if that so that would be or could be considered under the umbrella of what is being proposed.
Can I ask if this has resourcing issues, and one of the disadvantages is that it does require staff resourcing? What is the staff not going to do that it's currently planning on doing?
I think that's a question for the council.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the recommendation didn't, in the cover report, didn't just include the recommendations from the resilience council. That mentions that council and the rest of the resilience statement request staff to plan statements outlining those requirements. And that's what we're doing. That's all we're doing. We're not actually allocating the budget, except asking for what we're requiring.
So that doesn't take any staff time to get to that point.
Well,
Dave, is your mic on? Is your mic on?
it is now. Sorry about that. Okay, further questions? Oh, now, are you happy to move, Councillor Benson?
Well, if you'll entertain.
Yes.
For the reasons similar to those that you just expressed, I'd like to move something slightly different, namely a slight modification of the top two lines on page 3, option 1. And I was going to suggest for Council's consideration that a motion which would read as follows, that the Council note, rather than endorse, the Council notes CRF's recommendations and staff prepare a resourcing report for annual plan discussions. I don't know how big this is. I found this really interesting reading both the material in the Star and also these papers and the memo. And I think while it also suggests opportunities at the macro level, it also has the potential, as some of the examples like the fruit trees in the streets and so on, to, at a micro level, address food poverty in our community, and we've had reports about that across the country in the last few days, and it's certainly no different here. So, with a view to scoping this without putting resource, or other than small amounts of resource in the interim into that, it seems to me that that would be a good way of keeping the door open on what may be quite a big body of work. May, I hope, as Councillor Wiley said, further encourage and empower community groups rather than letting them off the hook, so to speak, to be involved in initiatives like this. But I certainly think it's something that should be part of our annual plan discussions, like everything else that can be put on the table, because, as I say, I think there are a lot of areas where this has great potential for this community.
Is there a second to that? Councillor Banners. So the motion is that Council notes the Community Resilience Forum's recommendations and asks staff to prepare a resourcing report for the annual plan discussion.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one other comment that I omitted? I chose note because I don't think note applies support at this point that endorse, in my view, does. And I think that will be a sensible way to proceed until we get a better handle on what we're talking about.
Happy with that. Speakers, Councillor McTavish.
Just a question of the mover, so that I fully understand the motion. I understand why you might want to note the first part of the Community Resilience Forum's motion or recommendations as it refers to a strategic endorsement. But the second part of the Community Resilience Forum's motions on page 15.5 is effectively a more specific version of what you have moved, which gives staff a degree of guidance as to what they would be preparing resourcing requirements for. And I just wonder whether in noting, whether perhaps it would be, and the ball's entirely in your court, of course, but what I was going to propose to move was just to A and B, noting A and moving to A and B, noting 1 and moving to A and B, because I think it does give that more specific direction for staff as to what there would be a need to resource. Yeah. So my question is, was Councillor Benson-Pope's intention to give the direction into A and B to staff, or did he have a broader scope in mind for that resourcing?
I'm entirely in the hands, Mr. Chair, and I happily withdraw my motion if the meeting would prefer just to run with the ones that are carried.
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Is that my understanding?
Well, the reason why I bring it to the attention of the member is because I am slightly concerned that the motion as it is currently couched is so broad as to not perhaps give staff the specific direction that they might require to design a budget or resourcing requirements around it, whereas 2A and B are quite targeted in what they are articulating the need for resourcing on.
Withdraw it with the leave of the meeting.
Right. So it becomes.
Well, I'm happy to move that if you prefer to do it that way.
Right, so that's probably the easier way is for you to just amend what and let's get some wording and then we'll find out if the seconder.
I was entirely happy with the original wording, and I'm concerned by the idea that staff need to go and design a budget, as has just been suggested. I'm quite happy to note what has been said, as Councillor Benson-Pope has suggested. I think that there is a lot that we can do, given that we plant so many trees and shrubs ourselves in the city. And I think there's probably a coordinating role that could be done within existing budgets as well. That's as far as I would like it to go. So I'm not quite sure where I should put my vote now.
Can I suggest that the suggestion for Councillor McTavish actually targets this and reduces the possibility of spending more money on too broad a report? It actually makes it quite specific what the report's about, so it'll actually save money, I would have thought.
Can I ask something?
Sure, certainly.
Can I ask our Chief Executive whether she can whether she can do this A and B stuff still in Scottish terms pretty cheaply, and whether it endorses any follow-up work in her view?
I think 2A can be done comfortably within existing budgets. I think the first half of 2B around engagements with city stakeholders can be done modestly, and I think the mechanisms to address the challenges, risks and opportunities will come as the Community Resilience Forum continues to explore the issues of food. And
sorry, Sue, can I just correct you on the Community Resilience Forum's role?
Yes, please.
They're not a working group in that they're going to do any more work on food. For them, they've looked at the issue and they've made their recommendations.
Then in that case, with what we have on the board at the moment, the second half of B is fairly flexible, I would suggest. So the report to you would outline some relatively tightly constrained options and potentially some larger options if you wanted to pick them up, which is probably what you want, but it still does put them very much within the framework. I must say I prefer to be adopting a report specifically referenced to A and B because it does keep us fairly tight, or somewhat tighter, rather than just the broader idea of food in general.
So, where does that leave us? My take on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if we were to take on board Councillor McTavish's tighter scoping, that your motion would be the council notes the CRF's recommendations, 1, and then 2, A and B, on page 15.5. Is that my understanding?
Can I make one further suggestion to the mover, and that is taking on board Councillor Calvert and Councillor Vandervis's concerns about budget specifically, that it be reworded outlining resourcing / budget requirements, and that gives the opportunity for staff to come back and say X and Y can be done within existing budgets, but with the following resourcing implications.
Did you get that wording?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Pam, I wonder if you could, Heather, if you put up on the screen, Councillor Staines.
Just seeing we're wordsmithing things a little bit, I'd still like to get my opportunities in here because I do see opportunities, and so my recommendation, if it was acceptable in the first part of the resolution, would be to say that the council note food as a strategic opportunity for the city and the need to improve our food supply resilience. So the opportunity, and it also gives that that further chance to improve the resilience of our food supply in the city, so that because I think we're focusing too much on it being an issue rather than seeing it as an opportunity for the city, and I think it is an opportunity.
That's a motion I'm happy to second.
Okay, well, it's actually your motion is just...
It's acceptable to the mover.
You can tweak it, actually. So when we get that, you could just get that to Pam, and then I'll get it put up on the screen because it's been moved. Councillor Wilson.
I know I'm going to speak in favour of the final motion, which I think you've almost got. If you want to wait until it's up there.
Well, I'm happy for you to speak to it as long as you're not trying to alter it half. You know.
I'm not trying to. Look, I just
Not because you're sure.
And I just wanted to give some background because not everyone will be aware of the Community Resilience Forum, of which I've been fortunate to be part of, and it's taken me places where, as a food producer or married to one, and as a sometimes cafe owner, it was an area I thought I knew quite a lot about, and I've learned a lot from being on the Resilience Forum. I've had the pleasure of being, and the quality of the people on that forum is outstanding, and the contribution that they've given over 3 years and in the last year, considering this issue, it's not. They're really thoughtful and very considered views and the opportunities that are out there. The reason I'm going to support this is because I respect the work that they have all done and given to the city in the last year. It's been a considerable amount of time and energy trying to focus on what real issues and opportunities are. And I think what I've learned after things like the Christchurch earthquake and the rebuilding of Christchurch is that we are at risk in our supply lines. And what I've also learned from being on that Resilience Forum is the opportunities of a new system working in with supermarkets and the opportunities that have been lost because of supermarkets and the way they operate. And I really think that issues that we have to address Otago-wide and probably Southland-wide, because we are seeing the food producers here do have a very hard time getting food into the markets, and I think we need to be there supporting them, and it's an opportunity lost if we don't. So I'm going to be supporting it, being cognizant of some wonderful work being done out there that needs some support.
Councillor McTavish.
Well, I'm just wondering if now would be the appropriate time to make a few comments just from the Community Resilience Forum perspective.
Sure.
And that is that I think that the Community Resilience Forum has seen its role in the broadest sense of the word resilience, and I think Chris has touched on that. Resilience, often we think about it in terms of response to a negative shock or a negative disturbance, but resilience is much more than that. We need to think of ourselves as an economically resilient city, as a socially resilient city, as an environmentally resilient city, and the Forum has approached this piece of work with that in mind. It focused on food because it saw a need for a piece of work around it due to the rising both energy in the community around issues pertaining to food, and also a level of or degree of concern, particularly in the wake of Christchurch and seeing shelves empty in terms of bread and that sort of thing. People were coming with questions around that. There are, as I think Councillor Wiley has articulated, a great number of community initiatives that are springing up in this area, and Council is just one player in a very big, broad spectrum of food-related issues. I think none of us around the table at the Community Resilience Forum had any idea the extent, though, to which Council interfaces with food until we started asking questions. And as most of you, I think, will probably have seen from Appendix 3 of the report, just about every Council department, or a great number of them, interface with food in some way or another. So with regards to that, I guess the first part of the Community Resilient Forum's recommendation, or 2A, it's not about doing anything new, it's about coordinating things so that we are delivering the best quality outcomes for our community. And I think that that's really important for us to consider in the context of the LGA, which does require us to be delivering really good quality outcomes, when good quality means something like efficient and effective, and in terms of both current needs and future needs. It's unfortunate, I think, that council doesn't have a consistent approach around the way that it guides these interactions, and that 2A would be a really good way, I think, of delivering at potentially no extra cost to council, significant wins in terms of both our business community and how they interface with us on food, and our community and how they interface with us on food. The second part, I think, is important for us to consider in the light that council is just one player, and the Community Resilience Forum became very, very aware of that. You know, when we look at the sheer number of people involved in food in the city, it is significant, and there is a great deal of focus on the private sector delivering for us, which is really great, but I think that we need to be aware of that, and that's part of the need for these conversations. Having said that, the Community Resilience Forum, I think, was also delighted with the goodwill around this topic. You know, we had initial discussions with both of the major supermarket chains, and they indicated a real willingness to engage, as did a large number of business players and community representatives. So I have no doubt that the conversation, should we get to that point, would be fruitful. That wasn't deliberate. And I guess the final point that I did just want to make is that I think we're all very cognizant, and the Community Resilience Forum is certainly just as cognizant as anyone else, because we've had 4 councillors around the table reminding them constantly that we're under severe budget constraints. This recommendation was made with that in mind, so it was made noting that council would need to consider this in the light of all of the other priorities, and that's why the recommendation was for a report to come back to annual plan rather than for some kind of resource-intensive project that would require significant budget. So that is why it is couched in the way that it is, and it's also why that first part of the recommendation, number 1, was couched in terms of its strategic importance for the city, not just for council, but for the city as a whole. So I just wanted to lay that out as background for you guys all. I hope it helps with that discussion.
Councillor White.
The key aspect that I look at over and over again is that, you know what, I agree with the concept. I think it's wonderful, and it's amazing how the community stepped up here time and time again, and how it's growing. And someone told me, you know, when I was going through this, and he said, resilient communities become stronger with increased community buy-in and participation. And I think that's the number one thing we've got to maintain. The community needs to participate. I do not want to pick up the ODT or the article in the Star last week to see the Dunedin City Council was in the food business. That to me is something we shouldn't be in. We should be facilitating to make that happen. So I'm really concerned that we go down this pathway and start building a resource structure inside the DCC, trying to make this happen, because we've got so many great players around the city that can actually do this. And that's my real concern is, let's leave the community to do this, let's help the community do this, and let's really be able to stamp our authority as being a great city in New Zealand, if not the world, for doing this. Because I think we do have the assets already within the city, they just need a little bit of help.
I don't think I'm going to have any difficulty with things that come out of the report particularly, but I have no appetite, in use of other people's words, to support something that says that we're acknowledging that food is the strategic issue for the city. It seems to me somewhere between sort of unnecessary and unknowing what exactly we would mean by that. We all have to eat, we all know that, the city, anywhere else, but I don't see why it's a particularly strategic thing to do.
Look, I have some sympathy with Councillor Calvert's views in that regard, and conveyed those to Councillor McTavish over the weekend, but I am going to support this because I'm looking at it slightly differently to that. I agree if we go down the route of saying that we need to see food as a strategic issue in terms of disaster or changing economic circumstances or whatever, my view is that we're probably getting involved in things that the market should be involved in. And frankly, if it's things that the market doesn't have time to adjust to, it's things that this wouldn't have an impact on in any meaningful way anyway. Where I do see the opportunities, and on a further reread, as I was encouraged to do, where I do see the opportunities is in where we interface as an organisation. And if I can give you a trite and silly example that occurred to me the other week when I was sitting under one of those boring signs that we put in every cafe telling them that they're an A, a B or a C. And I looked at it and I thought, why can't we put signs in there that say congratulations on being an A grade cafe, you're a star or something like that, instead of these bureaucratic ways in which we approach what we do. And I acknowledge that that's a particularly silly little example, but it is an example of how we interface and how we could do that differently. When I look at waste that goes on in terms of food because of regulation, and I often wonder, is that really what the regulation actually determines, or is it how we interpret it, or how we communicate it, or how other people see it, and could we change those things by the way in which we might act differently? So if this provides us an opportunity to look at some of those things and mesh that back to the red carpet, not red tape approach, then I think that will be a really beneficial thing, and it doesn't have to cost bugger all. If it is much more than that, as Councillor Wiley expressed his concern, then I would share his concern. So I'm going to support this and see what comes out of it.
Councillor Hawkins.
Just a point of clarification really, and this might assuage Councillor Wiley's concerns. The motion as put is doing exactly what he was suggesting, that there is a lot of work being done and that the council coordinate the work that's already being done. That is the motion as it's put. Okay. So all of this is doing is asking staff to let us have this detailed conversation at a later date as part of the annual plan process. It's not committing us to anything more than that. Thank you.
Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Worship. I think on that last point, that's where I have concerns, is that we set a list of annual plan items from staff who have very diligently provided good background for the substance or the reason for those items to be considered through the annual plan process. But we have picked one out, a plum, I might add, to be dealt with today with not a heck of a lot of consideration for all those other items. And I appreciate there is a community desire for more community gardens and greater resilience. And I think it wasn't that many years ago the catchphrase was sustainability when we talked about local government, and now the catchphrase is resilience and becoming a resilient city, and maybe Christchurch has got a lot to do with that. But I'm relaxed about the terminology in there, but I'm not relaxed about us dealing with this on an ad hoc basis, one-off, without that other information on all those other topics that we will consider further down the track. So that would be my main concern. The other concern I would have would be around the purpose of the Act. I heard Councillor McTavish refer to that in her speech, and I would feel much more comfortable if there was reference, probably won't vote for the recommendations, but if there was reference in there that we have further consideration on that aspect at annual plan time, because for me, to get that over the line, I think it needs to be further, I suppose, fleshed out to understand this does fit within the purpose of the Local Government Act, and I think that's fundamental in our decision making going forward, whatever we're dealing with. So I'm not saying no, put up the shutters. What I'm saying is that I have concern because those other items aren't here today and the LGA issues.
Your Worship, I've got a point of order.
Point of order.
A point of order is, and the reason why this report is here, and it's been picked out, the point of order is that this is a report back to the Council. It's the first opportunity it has come from that Resilience Forum. It hasn't been picked out to be added out of the process. It's the process that has got it here, is that it didn't get in for the last Council at the end of the last term. And it was just correcting the impression that was given. I think you used the word picked out, when it actually is a process. It is the first time this report has been able to be tabled at the council. So for clarification, I think it's not fair to say it's been picked out. It is a report.
If you wish in my defence, can I defend that?
You just wanted to use the word plum, right?
Look, I realise that it's got to come to council and there's a reporting process. That's fine. But my main issue is not having those other items around today to be able to consider it and weigh up against other priorities that we may or may not. And to be fair to staff, they've come along today to ask us to prioritise, and what I'm saying back to them is that we haven't got that other long list in front of us to be able to weigh up our priorities.
But I would suggest that the place to do that is an annual plan.
Well, as long as
that's what this is. That's what this is about. Take it to annual plan so it can be prioritised. I would have thought.
I just feel that sorry, Chief. Stand, but I feel that perhaps it's been given a head start on the other items.
So we currently have a list of reports that have come out of a number of council meetings over the last few months where councillors have asked for reports to come to annual plan for consideration as to where they fit in the priority list. So this one certainly isn't the only one. It would add to it would add to a list. And at that point you will then have the anticipated rates position and then a list of potential projects, heritage, food, energy. I mean, there's a variety, and then you would then have that weigh up process. I would also anticipate as part of that process that we will be giving guidance on all of those issues with regard to the new statement purpose of the Local Government Act. So we will be doing that absolutely standard for all of our recommendations through annual plan to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Vance.
I've got some sympathy with the forum recommendations, but I am concerned that there may be a negative effect to the DCC actually being involved. I look at any decision that I come up with on behalf of the public and say, well, if I vote for it and this happens, will I have any regrets? And then look at the other side, say, well, if I vote against it and nothing happens, will I have any regrets? In this particular case, I'm concerned that voting for it may actually have some regrets. I don't see that the DCC has any particular expertise in the food business. I don't see that the DCC has any particular expertise in being able to actually help food resilience, perhaps other than leading by example with its own Parks and Reserves Department in not solely having ornamental planting. There was one other area that I'm not sure about, and I don't know if it's too late for a question of staff or not, another area that I thought that the DCC may have a role in, and that is the encouragement of composting. Now, we already perhaps do that by not taking people's green waste away, but I'm just wondering if perhaps we might have a role there, and is that envisaged as being part of the resilience forum?
It's in there.
I mean, it is in there. Okay. So, yeah, my reason for not voting for this is because I think it's got the potential to grow legs, a department, a new job and budgets all of its own. What I would like to do, or what I'd like to see first, is the DCC in the work that it already does, I'm talking parks and recreation plantings, to see that being led by example. And if we're able to get our own house in order that way, and if we're actually able to do something in terms of food resilience with all the resources that we already have ourselves, then we might be in a position to say, well, yes, we have the expertise to coordinate all these other people doing it. Currently, I think most of the people that are involved in community gardens, most of the people that are involved in permaculture, most of the people that are involved in organics are far more qualified and far more able to do the right thing than we might imagine that we have any ability in. So, just for safety's sake, Not that I'm against any of the recommendations. I won't be voting for it in its current form. It's a step too far.
Well, another second in that case. But anyway, I'm going to speak to this. I don't see this as about council getting into the food business. I don't see it as council having expertise in food at all. I see it as twofold, and I must say, along with Councillor Wilson, I was on the resilience panel and I was quite remarkably surprised by the number of areas that council impacts on food. Not so much interfaces, but impacts. The district plan, written one way, would allow community gardens, written another, could ban them altogether. So we have a role in a number of areas in facilitating various aspects of food that we probably don't even think about. And that's the case right across the board. So I see this as twofold. One, coordinating the areas of activity of council that we already are involved in with regard to food, and actually pulling them together was probably, given our inherited slightly silo type arrangement of council, was probably some inefficiency and duplication in council now with regard to how we deal with food, and we can straighten that out and save some resources. The other area I see it working is more as a facilitation model. What I'd compare this with is our economic development strategy. We went out of our way to create a partnership model where we don't do it all. We're not experts in it. And so we've got the university, we've got the Polytech, we've got the Chamber of Commerce, and I see this very much as council facilitating and partnering, and as Councillor Wiley says, the community is doing the work. The businesses are doing the job. We are just coordinating it from the best interests where it's appropriate. And in some cases, we won't be doing it, I would imagine, the coordination, just as with our economic development strategy. We have the Chamber of Commerce interfacing on our China relationship and doing quite a lot of the work at their expense for us, for council, or for the city, actually. So I see this as an exploration at a very, at this point, an exploration for the annual plan of what might be possible, at what price, and how we might facilitate synergies and cooperation across the city with regard to food, which clearly is, whether you call it strategic or not, is essential for the future of the city. I see it, as Councillor Staines does, an opportunity. So we do have the issue of who is moving this and who's not. Councillor Benson Pope moved it, seconded Councillor Hawkins now. If there are no, do you wish to exercise your right of reply, Councillor Benson Pope? Do you wish to exercise your right of reply? Right. So I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Could I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? It's carried.